Steel City Con presents to you Hayden Christensen. How are you? Very well, thank you. Grab a mic, grab a...
Hello.
And a round of applause for the 501st Star Killer Garrison. Thank you so much.
The 501st, I love it. You guys do great work.
Well, thank you so much for coming out and doing this with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. And thank you all for coming.
This is great. So I've got some questions. They got some questions. Let's just hang out for a bit.
Let's get into it.
All right. Right off the bat, you're globally known, obviously, for Anakin Skywalker in episodes 2 and 3 of Star Wars. How did you prepare for such an iconic and complex character? What preparation went into that?
Right. You know, there's sort of, I guess, two sides to the preparation: the character development, and then the physical preparation, and learning to swing a lightsaber. In terms of the character development, I kind of had to start to figure it out just during the auditioning process, so I could try to get the part, and that was just sort of starting at the basics and just watching the Star Wars films over and over and over again, which I loved and thoroughly enjoyed. But just sort of working with what I knew, starting with Jake Lloyd in episode 1, and trying to sort of make something that would have, I guess, a familial connection, not just obviously to Jake, but to Luke and to Leia, and just figuring out qualities that might remind George Lucas of people that he's already cast in these roles. And that was kind of where I started, because they didn't give me a script, before I had the part, and then from there I got the part, which was amazing, and then it was about just sort of going through the script and trying to figure out like all of the motivations and figuring out what the impetus was to sort of send him to the dark side, and trying to sort of plot out how that was going to take place. And then the physical preparation of learning a lightsaber, that was just a tremendous amount of fun. And I got to go out to Australia where we filmed episode 2 and 3, and I spent a couple of months with Nick Gillard, the stunt coordinator, and yeah. And that was just, I grew up playing a lot of sports, and so it was kind of like, going to hockey camp or going to tennis camp, but it was like, Jedi training camp, and we'd go for like 4 or 5 hours every day, and he would sort of walk me through the choreography, and you kind of, learn it like you would a dance, and so it's, where do your feet go, and what are the movements, and then just trying to do it over and over and over again, so it kind of becomes muscle memory. And that was, I guess, really some of my favorite stuff was just learning the lightsaber fights.
What did you find the most challenging about portraying a transition from a Jedi to Darth Vader? What was like the hardest part of the transition for you?
I don't know. I mean, it was very clearly mapped out in the scripts, and obviously George Lucas walked me through what he was looking for. But that was the character arc. I think probably the most challenging part for me was just the how they filmed it. It was all done in front of a blue screen and a green screen for the most part, which for me, I was sort of new to all of it. I'd acted since I was little, and I'd done a lot of theater too, so for me it was kind of very similar to being on stage, where you don't have the environment to react to. But it was just a lot of sort of using your imagination, and you'd get sort of storyboards of what was eventually going to be the environments that you were acting in, and you just tried to sort of suspend your disbelief and pretend like you were there. And that was also the joy of getting to see the movies afterwards, is then you were like, oh, wow, that's what it actually looked like. So that was good fun.
So did you almost feel like you were studying for two separate characters? Was it that drastic to handle that, or did you find it kind of a more of a glide into the dark side?
No, I mean, it's definitely just sort of a continuum, if you will. And I think, if anything, I had a hard time sort of holding back on sort of, like, I always wanted to sort of indicate sort of where we were going, and George would say, you know, not yet, Hayden, you know, that's later on. But you know, I always thought Anakin's motivations were very easy to understand. You know, he was doing everything for love and trying to help the people that he loved. And you know, for Anakin, his like, what really made him special was his ability to sort of see into the future, if you will. And so, you know, he knew that his mom was in trouble, but he couldn't save her, so he was there a little bit too late. And then when he started, you know, having his premonitions of Padme dying in childbirth, he wanted to do something about that. So it was all, you know, stuff that I could really sort of empathize with, and it made sense to me.
So you took a break from acting after your time with Star Wars franchise. What prompted that decision, and how has your perspective on the industry changed since you've returned?
I don't know that I really have a perspective on the industry, but I took a couple of breaks, actually. The first one wasn't really by design. You know, I made several films after Star Wars, and then I bought some land out in the country not far from where I grew up in Canada, and I just really liked being there. And so, you know, it was one of those things where it was like I hadn't done a film in, like, you know, 6 months, and then 6 months turned into a year, and then that turned into 2 years. I was like, I should really go back and do another film. And so then I went and I made a few more films, and then I became a dad. And thank you. Thank you. And I was just sort of more interested in you know, being a father and raising my daughter than sort of the films that I was considering at the time, and so it just, you know, became one of those things where again, you know, a lot of time started to go by, and I hadn't made another movie, and it was probably about 4 or 5 years. And then I got a call from Lucasfilm again asking me to come back and play this character again, and that was kind of a no-brainer. And so I did, and I did it twice, and I hope to get to do it again. We'll see.
Yes. So you worked on a range of projects, from like blockbusters like Star Wars to smaller, more intimate films like Shattered Glass. How do you decide what projects you take on, and what kind of roles excite you to take?
I just sort of do what appeals to me, I guess. I've never really approached my career with any sort of concept of a career. You know, I would read scripts, and I would either feel drawn to the character, or maybe there was a filmmaker that I really wanted to work with. And so I did sort of films that appealed to me. What was the latter part of the question?
It was just, how do you decide?
Just what appeals to me, really, with no real sort of concept of how is this going to affect my career, or what type of career am I trying to build. Just you know, characters that and I think early on too, I just wanted to play roles that would challenge me. And so, you know, you read a script, and you have to sort of see a way in and think that you can maybe believe yourself in that role. But I also wanted to feel like I didn't know how to do it yet, and it would be sort of a challenge trying to figure it out. And so that sort of would inform those decisions too.
So when you reprised your role as Anakin, what was it like reuniting with Ewan McGregor?
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I love you, and you know became really close when we were doing the prequels, and we shared in something that was really unique, just both getting to play Jedi Knights, and so we developed this really genuine kind of brotherly bond. Um, and then I heard that he was coming back to Star Wars for Obi-Wan, and I was thrilled for him, but I didn't know that I was going to get to be a part of it yet. And then they called me, and of course I was like, I would love to. I'd love to get to play this character again, and to come back and swing a lightsaber with Ewan again was a no-brainer. And we had a blast, and it was kind of like no time had passed when we sort of got back in costume and got back on set, and it was a surreal thing for us. And I'd love to get to do it with him again too. So we'll see.
Excellent. Grab a drink. So I got to ask you, obviously working with George Lucas, but you also work with Ridley Scott. Working with great
No,
directors.
I've never worked with Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott? No?
No.
Well,
I would love to, but
well, then there you go.
But
well,
no.
what have you learned? What other directors have you worked with that you enjoyed their work aside from George Lucas?
I've gotten to work with a lot of great filmmakers. I really liked. I did a film called Jumper with Doug Liman.
I'm sorry. That's right. Sorry.
Yeah, no, all good. And I really admired some of his previous films, and so I was excited to get to do that. But Irwin Winkler was a very prolific producer, and he directed a film I got to do called Life is a House. But then I also have worked with a lot of first-time filmmakers too, which I really enjoy, just because I feel like they have something to prove, and that's a fun sort of thing to be a part of.
Do you ever think of directing?
Yeah, it's something that I. It's something I've thought about for a while, and I've come close a couple of times with a couple of projects that I was developing, but it just wasn't quite right. But I'm sure at some point I'll figure out a story that I really connect with, and we'll get behind the camera and hopefully direct something, and hopefully it'll be good. Yes.
Would you mind taking some questions from the audience now?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, let's get your questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's knock them out. Raise your hand. She'll come around and get your questions.
Am I picking? Oh no, she's doing it. Okay.
Yeah, unless you want to. We'll.
Thanks for taking my question. For the end of Return of the Jedi, do you feel it's about Luke or it's about you coming back as a Jedi?
Good question. Yeah, I think it's really about Luke. I mean, George Lucas, would tell me that this is kind of the story of Anakin Skywalker, and so it is about him, coming back to the light or Vader sort of finding Anakin again. But no, from my perspective, the original films are about Luke, and so that's where I sit on that.
Okay, let's grab some more.
Hi, how you doing?
Nice and loud.
Yeah, when you got the part for Jumper, and then the Samuel L. Jackson was going to be in there with you. Was he like, that mother effer took my arm? Can I get his arm back?
Yeah, I loved getting to do that with Sam Jackson, and I think he actually helped me get that role. We got to work together, obviously, on the Star Wars films, and to me that was just one of the coolest things. I was a 19-year-old kid when I started, and found myself on set with all of these sort of legends, and I was a big fan of Sam Jackson. But I don't know if he held a grudge from me taking his arm off and sort of participating in his demise. But I did it again in Jumper too. But no, he's really great, really nice man, and he wrote me a really nice handwritten note after we did Jumper, which I still have to this day, and it means a lot to me.
Nice. Next question, please.
Hi. How has your role as Anakin Skywalker impacted who you've become in terms of your personal growth throughout your life?
I mean, the character and just getting to be a part of this franchise has had a massive impact on my life, obviously. You know, it's why I get to be here with all of you. And it's been a journey with the character, for sure, you know. I don't know, I think if anything, I've really enjoyed getting to come to these conventions now and getting to sort of be a part of this community of people that love these films, and it means a lot to me, you know, and it's why I come, and so, you know, even though our time together is very brief when we meet and take a picture or sign something, I really appreciate that we get to, you know, have those moments. But no, I've been very fortunate with my, you know, getting to play this role and getting to be a part of these stories that have had a tremendous impact on people and a positive impact, you know, I think, and so getting to hear. We've got other people wanting to participate in the panel. Just getting to hear stories about, you know, how Star Wars has kind of helped them through maybe difficult times in their life, or getting to sort of meet people that, you know, have shared these films with their kids, or, you know, and seeing that sort of family connection. It's very touching, and it means a lot to me.
We have one in the back here.
Great. If you could stand up, that would be great.
Yeah. I know we're in Pittsburgh, but I'm a Leafs fan. I know you're a Leafs fan.
Yeah.
Do you think this is the year?
I know I'm not in the right city with the jacket, but I just got it, and I am a big Leafs. I'm a big hockey fan, and I grew up in Toronto, so this was my hometown team. But I haven't watched a game in a little bit, to be honest with you, because I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious, and every time I sort of get reinvested in the team, we don't go very far. So I'm kind of not watching for a little bit, hoping that they'll do better this year. And I think keep on watching. Yeah. But yeah, I'm a big Leafs fan.
All right, next.
Oops, sorry. I know we're Leafs fans here. Anyway, I just wanted to ask also, like, on the topic of your farm, you've talked about like building ponds and stuff. Any other fun projects you're doing over there?
Yeah, there's always projects on my farm. Always like renovating old buildings, and I did get big into sort of pond construction. That actually started in Los Angeles, and it was right before I had my daughter, and I was just trying to figure out a way of like having a bit of nature in LA for her, and so I built a little pond and put some fish in it. And I loved it, and so then I was like, I'll do this at my farm too, because I've got more land, and so I've built quite a few ponds. I built like 5 ponds now, and it's just, I don't know, it's another sort of form of creative expression for me, trying to sort of create something that mimics nature, and it's really kind of easy. Like, you just dig a big hole, gather a bunch of rocks, and then you pump it from the bottom up to the top of a stream, and so there's not too much to it. And I've sort of collected a lot of big construction equipment, and so I have like an excavator and a dump truck and all of the tools that I need to build a pond, so it works out. And it's something I enjoy doing. But no, I really love being out in the country, and farm life is good life, and I'd like to get into like growing things, and I've always had a thing for lavender, and so I'd like to grow a lot of lavender at some point, but I don't get to spend enough time there right now, but one day I'll get into that stuff too.
Great. Next question, please.
Hi, Hayden.
Hayden.
Hello.
So I've heard you watched all of Clone Wars, right? Yeah. So it's a big series, but which one is your absolute favorite episode?
Oh, I don't know. I did a serious Clone Wars marathon before I came back for Obi-Wan, just because I was trying to re-immerse myself into all things Star Wars, and there were all these new stories that were told in the animated world, and I was just really taken with the work that Dave Filoni did with George Lucas. But what was my favorite? I really liked the Mortis arc. I thought that was really great. And I loved the relationship with Ahsoka, and finding out that Anakin had a Padawan of his own was news. And then when they cast Rosario for the live action version, I was thrilled because I knew her from when I was like a teenager. We went to the same theater school together. So I thought there was something sort of kismet about that. And then when I got to come back for Ahsoka, that was thrilling.
Great. All right. Next question, please.
Hi, I was wondering if you want to see anything new done with Anakin's character.
I feel like Anakin's story has really sort of been told, but what we got to do in season 1 of Ahsoka, I thought was exciting, because we were getting to sort of explore a new side of the character, and the character at a sort of different time in his life, and getting to put the Clone Wars armor on was awesome. So, I would love to get to do that again, but I don't know. I think if anything, there's more stories to be told in sort of the Darth Vader timeline, and I think that would be really interesting to me.
Great. Are we
Hi.
over there?
My wife and I are expecting our first kid in 2 months, and so
Congratulations.
thank you. When the time comes, I still don't know. Should we show him 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Which way do you think is the best way to get Anakin's story?
It's a very deep question. I don't know that there is a right or a wrong way of doing it. I think there's merit to both. Obviously, I think George Lucas would like you to start at episode 1 and just sort of enjoy the story in a linear fashion. But then there's things that you kind of miss out if you start with episode 1, like the reveal that Darth Vader's. I'm not going to give anything away here, but that Vader is Luke's dad, and so I don't know that there is a right or a wrong. I think it also depends at what age you decide to show them, and I'm still trying to figure it out for my daughter too, to be honest. Yeah. I think I'll start with episode 1 though.
We're here in the back.
Ray in the back. There you go. Can you stand up, please? There you go.
So, thanks for giving me a great childhood as Anakin Skywalker. I just want to say that.
Thank you so much.
So, the first film my dad actually introduced me to was episode 3. And I just wanted to ask, what does it feel like having that film be 20 years old now?
It makes me feel a little old. When episode 3 came out, there was a lot of strong opinions. I'll say that, and I think at the time I sort of thought to myself, and I think I even said it in interviews that I'm more sort of curious about how people will receive these films 20 years from now, and so to sort of be here now 20 years from now, and to enjoy sort of the affection that people have for those films, especially episode 3. it really means a lot to me, you know. And we were, you know, we were trying to make something that would have that would last in our culture for a while, and it, you know, it's vindicating, I guess, that you know, these films are still, you know, enjoyed by people, and you know, I still, you know, meet young kids that are, you know, really excited to meet Anakin, and just the fact that they're still watching him now means a lot, and I hope it continues, you know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Next, let's grab some more from the back of the room, please.
Hi, Hayden. I have a question and a statement. One, is there any chance we get a sequel to Jumper? And my statement is, you are officially invited to my upcoming wedding this summer.
Thank you for the invitation. I've got a busy summer, but I would love to be there. It depends on where it is. We'll see.
We're over here on the side.
Oh, wow, you move fast.
Well, I haven't finished the. You were asking about Jumper too.
Yes,
I don't know. You know, we were going to originally do a couple more films, and then for various reasons it didn't happen. So I would say at this point, you know, probably unlikely, but never say never. So.
Okay. When you were filming the prequels, did you at all find it difficult to not make lightsaber sound effects when you were doing those prequels?
I did, yeah. Just because I grew up also as a Star Wars fan, and you know, that's what you do when you swing a lightsaber. You make the sound effect, and it was difficult for me not to. And I remember a couple of times. Like after we would shoot a scene, George would come up to me and say, you know, Hayden, that was really great, but I can see your mouth moving, and you don't need to make the lightsaber sound effects. We do that in post. And it was, you know, it was a little embarrassing, but you know, as you do, you make the sound effect. And
Let's grab a few more. We have about 10 minutes left.
Hi.
Hi there.
What's a memorable behind-the-scenes scene from your time on set on Star Wars, of any project you've done?
A behind-the-scenes memory from Star Wars. I mean, I have so many fond memories from making those films, and they're all still like really vivid for me. But you know, just my time spent in Australia, it was like a really great adventure for me. I was a 19-year-old kid. Living out my wildest dreams of like making Star Wars with George Lucas, and traveling to the other side of the world on my own, and just the friendships that I made. You know, I became really close with Nick Gillard because, you know, we were doing a lot of the training before we started filming, and so I just spent a lot of time with him. And we lived right next door to each other on Bondi Beach in Sydney, and I remember we used to have like these really epic water balloon fights because we discovered that our balconies were within throwing distance of each other. And so every time you'd walk out onto your balcony, you kind of had to like give a look over to make sure, you know, the other person wasn't there. And if you let your guard down, you'd just get a water balloon like right in the face. But just a lot of sort of fun hijinks like that, and then George's son Jet Lucas would come over on the weekends, and we'd play video games together. And then he got in on the water balloon war too, but then he directed it towards there was a restaurant across the street, and so there were these like valet people that were outside all the time, and he decided it was a good idea to bomb a couple of them, but we got away with it. I don't know. I could talk for hours about those memories, but yeah, lots of very fond memories. And I think she's had her hand up for a little while. So Padme here. Sorry.
There you go.
So I was wondering, how much muscle memory do you still have?
Oh. I don't know if I can do that. Yeah. I still pick up a lightsaber and make sure I don't, forget how to swing a lightsaber, just in case. But yeah.
And down front on the other side.
Hi.
Hi there.
How did you feel in the end after having such a successful run coming back to the convention throughout 2024? Like Columbus, like Ohio, like that being the last. How did you feel overall looking back? I just wanted to know.
Just coming here and doing the conventions, because I've been doing them for more than a few years now, and I didn't for the longest time. And then I came back to a Star Wars celebration. I think in like 2018, maybe 2019, and because George Lucas was going to go, and they asked me if I would go as well, and so I did, and I had a really great time, and it was a really nice experience. So I thought, you know what, I'd like to do this again, and so I did a couple more the next year, and then I did a few more the year after that, and I think last year I went to, close to a dozen, like maybe 9 or 10. And I love it, you travel to a new city. I've never been to Pittsburgh before, so this is my first time here, and it's a really fun environment. You get to be in a place where people are there's a lot of love, and to get to be in a space where there's such good energy is a rare thing. And so I really enjoyed getting to come to these, and it's really all about you guys and the love that you guys have for these films. It means a lot.
Got time for about 3 or 4 more.
Hello.
Hi there.
While I'm loving the Star Wars questions, I do have to ask about Little Italy.
Okay.
I love a good rom-com. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience on that set, working with Emma Roberts, really anything?
Yeah, I hadn't done a romantic comedy before, and wasn't really a genre that I had thought much about. And then I got this script, and I thought the script was very sweet, and the fact that it was going to film in Toronto was compelling, because I'm always looking for a reason to get to spend more time at my farm. And I really enjoyed getting to work with Emma and everybody on that movie. The late Danny Aiello, I loved. We became very close and really really fond of the work that he's done in the past. But yeah, it was a fun, lighthearted film. So it was sort of a deviation from films that I had done in the past, and so it felt like I was trying something new. And who knows, maybe I'll do another rom-com or something one day. We'll see.
Nice. Okay.
We're over in the side here.
Over on the side. Oh, we got you.
Hi. So during the Mortis arc, Anakin and Obi-Wan were obviously busy fighting a war. But at the end, whenever the father offered Anakin the chance to stay and control the son and the daughter, do you think he would have taken that opportunity if he wasn't in the middle of fighting a war?
Oh, I don't know. That's a question for Dave Filoni, I think. But I don't know. But I just thought it was very creative storytelling, and they were sort of going into realms that you hadn't really seen in Star Wars before, and I thought they did a great job with it. But yeah, I don't know. But Anakin's always been sort of a little power hungry, I guess.
Let's get 2 more questions in, please.
Hi, Hayden. Over here.
Hi there.
So my question is aside from Star Wars, what is a film from your childhood that really inspired you to want to act?
Yeah, films that I really loved as a kid. The old animated Disney Robin Hood, where Robin Hood is a fox, and that was a film I used to just watch on repeat, and I think really informed my just sort of general views on like governance and taxation and things like that. But I also really loved The Princess Bride was another like very popular film in my house. And then like Top Gun. I was a big fan of Top Gun and Indiana Jones. Also, my older sister loved Indiana Jones, and so we used to watch those films a lot. Star Wars, of course. And then when I was like sort of 13, I really developed a real love of movies, and my parents were sort of became aware that this was something that I was taking seriously, and I asked them if I could go to acting class, and I was already sort of acting at that point too, and they got me a book called George Lucas: The Creative Impulse, and they were like, if you're interested in filmmaking, you should learn about this man George Lucas, who made Indiana Jones and Star Wars, but he was also responsible for like all of this sort of technological progress and with ILM and THX, and I just thought it was fascinating, and just the impact that he had already had on cinema was just without comparison to anyone else. And so when I started auditioning for Star Wars, I was really just excited to meet George Lucas because I had this book, and I was so sort of aware of his contributions to cinema. But I never thought that I would get the part. It just seemed too big and too far-fetched. And so when I went in to meet him for the first time, I told him that I had his book, and I started asking him just questions about ILM and how they did the special effects on Star Wars, and it was fascinating. But I think that also sort of helped me get the part, because I wasn't really thinking this is a part I want. I was just excited to meet George, and I was hoping I'd get like a souvenir from the Skywalker Ranch, and I was going to be good with that. But yeah, I've loved movies since I was a little kid, and knew that I wanted to have something to do in the film industry.
And let's grab one final question,
One
please.
right here in the center.
All right, 2 questions.
I was actually going to hand it to her. She's been waiting a while. This actually kind of piggybacks off what you just said. Throughout the auditioning process, was there ever a certain point where you did kind of feel like, oh man, I got this? And then on the day you actually did get it, can you tell us a little bit about that day?
Yeah, I went on. I had a couple of meetings. I met with the casting director, Robin Gerlin, initially, and that went really well, I thought. But again, I didn't think that this was a part I was going to get. Like when they first told me they were casting for Anakin, I was like, that's cool, but is there like a smaller part that maybe I could audition for? And then they were going to have they held a sort of a large. They invited, I think it was like 30 or 50 actors to come to LA to meet with George Lucas. But I was working on a TV show in Canada at the time, and not making a lot of money. And I was like, I don't know if I can afford the plane ticket to come out to LA as much as I would like to. And so I didn't go, and I kind of bowed out at that point. And then I got a phone call maybe like a month later saying, we'll pay for your plane ticket to come out to the Skywalker Ranch and meet George there. And so I was, obviously very excited to get to meet him. And so I went out, met with George. That was great. But I didn't think I would get the part still. And then when I found out that he was inviting me back to audition with Natalie Portman, and they were going to do like a screen test, and I think it was with a handful of actors at the time, that was sort of when it got real for me, when I was like, oh, this is actually maybe a possibility. And I got really nervous. And I remember the flight over, I was like sick to my stomach, and I went into the bathroom on the plane and I started throwing up. I was like, how am I going to do this? And I got to the Skywalker Ranch, and I spent the night there. The audition was the next day. And the room that they put me in, I guess, was the same room where one of the other actors who had already auditioned maybe the day before was staying. And when I got into the room, there was a phone, on the table next to the bed, and the voicemail light was blinking red. And so I picked it up and I checked the voicemail, thinking maybe it was for me. And it was I guess it was the mother of one of the other actors, and she was saying, I'm sorry that you didn't think it went well, and don't worry about it. And of course I felt bad, but I also thought, like, all right, that's one other kid I don't have to beat out. I was like, yes. And then the audition went well, and I thought, you know what, we'll see what happens. And then I went back I was living in Vancouver at the time, and I got a phone call 2 or 3 days later, early in the morning. I was still in bed, and it was like my agent and my manager, and there was like a group of people on the phone. I was like, this is maybe a good sign. And they told me that they had good news for me, and I was over the moon. And my roommate, I had a roommate at the time, and he knew I was up for this role. And so I walked out of my bedroom, and he was there, and I just had this big, like, shit-eating grin on my face. Excuse my French. And he kind of connected the dots. And so then I lit up an imaginary lightsaber for him. And then he had the Star Wars soundtrack on record, and he put from episode 1, and he put on Duel of the Fates, and we had this epic pretend lightsaber fight all over the apartment, jumping on all the furniture and just screaming like giddy little children, and it was wonderful.
And let's get the final question.
Thank you. I'm sorry. It's a really important question. So are you aware of the Darth Jar Jar theory? And if so, what is your opinion?
I've heard about the Darth Jar Jar theory. I don't know. I don't know. Not something that ever crossed my mind when we were filming. He always seemed kind of innocent. But I think it's a fun theory, and I've seen some pretty fantastic artwork too, where he looks really sinister. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Thank you so much for doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, Hayden Christensen, what an honor. What an aid.
Thank you so much,
Awesome.
everyone. I really appreciate it.